Do you believe that slavery was only condoned in the Old Testament? Well, let me read to you from Ephesians 6, verses 5 through 7. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people. Just as a reminder, that's the word of God for the people of God. So you still think it's just the Old Testament? Because I'd tell you it's absolutely detestable to tell slaves that they ought to have and obey masters. So if you believe this is the word of God and you stand by this, then give us a call because the show is starting right now. That's right, folks. It is another Sunday, which means welcome, because it's time for the Atheist Experience. Today is October 15th, 2023, and I am your host, Secular Rarity. And joining me today is someone I am super duper excited to have on, is the Cross Examiner. What is up, man?
Hey, how's it going, man? It's good to be here. Glad to be on the show, and especially glad to be here with you. I've been a fan for a long time. I'm really impressed by your encyclopedic knowledge of all of these issues. So I'm going to sit back and learn a lot, I'm sure.
Thanks, man. I really do appreciate that. And I've been really enjoying seeing you. I saw you on Truth Wanted, I think, a few weeks back. You were on Nonprofits as well. And now you're here. So I know that there are some of our wonderful fans here that are not familiar with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, man. What's kind of your background? How did you get into doing this? What do you focus on? Just give us the whole smattering if you can.
Oh, great. I'll give the medium smattering. I was raised by parents who were not especially religious, so I don't have the benefit of being raised in that environment. So I probably would have said, yes, I believe in God until I became a teenager and I started thinking about it like a lot of people. My professional background is I'm an attorney, a recovering attorney. I don't practice at this point, but I practice in FDA regulatory law, and I did a little criminal law, things like that. And what I do now for advocacy for these issues is I host a podcast called the Cross Examiner Podcast, and I focus on the rise of Christian nationalism through the spread of misinformation about laws, our justice system, the Constitution, and I try to correct the record and do a little bit of civics education as well.
That's awesome, man. And I love that. And I love that focus. We are definitely big fans here of critical thinking and the separation of religion and government. And it seems to me your stuff just really hits both of those really well, man. So I'm glad to have you on. And I hope we get to see you more. I hope we get to see you around more in the ACA, because I love having new people and new ideas and stuff. So
thanks. I really appreciate it.
Even if you are a recovering lawyer, we'll let it slide. We've got one or two, alleged lawyers here at the ACA.
They're smart enough to lay low.
That's right. They are. But with that, folks, I'm going to tell you a couple of wonderful things and remind you that the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. All good things we love to promote, not just on Sundays, by the way. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's stuff that happens like every day of the week. There's all kinds of really great stuff. So with that, though, I'm going to remind everybody that we have open lines right now, and they are not full. We've already got some really good calls, it looks like. But if you want to ask myself or the Cross Examiner a question, give us a call at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/call-AXP. We make it easy for you, folks. But we've done this thing. I don't know if you've heard about this, Cross Examiner, but we do this thing where we kind of like ask a question, or we give some prompt to people, and we want our wonderful viewers to share their experience. And we did one last week, and it was wrong answers only. In order to get right with God, one must blank. So I love that we do this. It gives it's always so much fun. Our community is just a bunch of nutcases that come up with some really wonderful responses.
Yeah.
And so we've got our top 3 from the last week. Share your experience. Number 3 is QC, saying, in order to get right with God, give me 10% of your money. I'll guarantee you will get into heaven, or 10 times your money back. Terms and conditions may apply. Look, I don't necessarily want to say I'm a celebrity or endorsing this message, but I know I've seen QC around. They've always seemed like a really stand-up individual. Seems pretty good to me. I mean, what do you think on that?
Well, you obviously can't prove that they're not in contact with God.
Point.
So why not? Why risk? Let's pull a little wager here. Why risk not donating? So I don't see how this is not the number 1 answer. I can't wait to see number 1 and 2.
They do it surprisingly. Somehow they get better, and I love it. So we've got number 2. Chuck Gatos is saying, believing in Jesus is supposed to get us right with God, but just to be safe, we should also perform 12 labors, visit Mecca, and toss a ring into a volcano. I agree. I think it is worth just kind of rounding out the board here and just be, whatever we got to do for all of them. Let's just, some of them are real, like toss a ring into a volcano. I don't know of any volcanoes like super close to me. That'd be a bit difficult,
No, I think if you were really faithful, you'd build a volcano to make that prophecy come true, and then toss a ring into it.
That's what it is, honestly. Yeah. And that's the reason I'm such a heathen and sinner right now, is because I just didn't have enough faith to begin with. That's my problem. I like it. Yep. Well, number 1 from Daniel Bringman, in order to get right with God, you have to get on your knees. I honestly believe that there is no commentary necessary here. I think this is completely explained and biblical, actually. I think we can find references to this exact commandment in the Bible.
Absolutely. I think the Bible does say the best things happen when you're on your knees. I think that's true.
Sometimes folks, we get a little focused in on the wrong things that the Bible says, but I want to praise those ancient books for getting this one spot freaking on, in my opinion. So thank you so much to all of our wonderful commenters. We've got another one for you. We've got one for this week. So remember, when this show is over, get your comments in the comment section. We won't count them if they're in the live chat. So I'm going to ask you first, though, Cross-Examiner. Wrong answers only. God sends natural disasters because he's mad about blank. What do you think God's mad about?
I think God's mad about the advent of smartphones. He doesn't like the fact that there's cameras everywhere now, because now he can't do miracles.
Right.
So he's really pissed about that.
Yeah. He had a much better time doing that stuff when like people weren't looking,
Yep.
It's like, that's pretty good. Plus you can do this whole like, when somebody comes up to you and just makes this really wacky claim or something, you can just like pull it up real quick and be like, oh my gosh, here's how it's totally wrong. Yeah.
There's a diagram. What do you know?
I could see why the all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful creator of the universe would be upset by that. Yeah. Absolutely. Folks, again, wrong answers only. God sends natural disasters because he's mad about blank. Get those comments in the comment section. And then make sure to tune in next week at the beginning of the show when we reveal our top 3, because it might be yours. With that, though, I gotta say, we've got some good stuff on the line, and we are going to grab a call, y'all, because that's what we're here to do. And we've got more lines open, folks. So again, if you're out there in the live chat and you're making a bunch of claims and you're saying God this or Bible that or Jesus or Muhammad or Shiva, anything, like, give us a call. We want to talk with you, and we definitely want to talk with folks that see things a little bit differently than us, because hey, maybe we're wrong. I'm totally willing to admit that. Maybe I am wrong. But we're going to go to Joe. Him is a theist, wants to try and help us understand a little bit about Jesus Christ. Well, hey, Joe, you're talking with Secular Rarity and the Cross-Examiner. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you guys?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Before we totally go down this route, I just want to kind of give some context here, man.
Gotcha.
We would prefer you not kind of like preach at us, but more kind of have a discussion with us. Like, hey, here's something I think, and here's kind of where I think that's supported. And then we can go, oh, okay, you know, that's interesting. Here's maybe why we don't accept that. But yeah, I mean, give us your thoughts. Like, what do you want to tell us today, Joe?
Well, I'll say that that's kind of cool because that's kind of like the way I talk to people. So it's just
Great.
not like we have a prison ministry, and in prison we do a circle so that everybody's allowed to ask questions about
Perfect.
anything, and that's where we start. Yeah, so
Yeah, I love that.
That's kind of yeah. So it's not about who's right or wrong. You have to share ideas. If you don't share them the best way possible, how are you ever gonna know? If you're force feeding somebody down a tube, it's gonna come back up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
anyways, would you like me to start, or would you guys want to?
By all means, why don't you start?
Okay, so I usually just start by the simple thing. I ask people what a noun is. You guys remember back in school what a noun was?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really sure where we're going, but yeah, I do. Person, place, thing.
Yeah, that's what Schoolhouse Rock taught me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just a
same
bill
thing,
on Capitol
thing.
Hill. Love that.
Yeah, and the reason why it's considered a noun is because it's something that can be seen, touched, and it can be observed. It's something tangible, something of reality.
I don't think that's exactly true. Cross-examiner, do you want to do a little explaining there? Or?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't want to preempt any further discussion that you're going to have, but the name noun is a label we put on a part of grammar. That's not the reason that it is a noun. Is not it can be seen or touched or observed. A name is a noun, but I can't touch my name. Cross-examiner is a noun, but I can't touch it or see it. I can think about it. So I just want to jump in on that early, because I find if we go into conversations a long way down the road and then we come back and we have to say, well, the premise of that the noun is this thing is wrong. I didn't want you to go too far before we settled that question. So I don't know if your argument depends upon that definition, but I thought I'd point that out.
It does, because we often forget that an idea isn't part of a noun too. So that's where we come into place, because I'm a person, place, or thing, or idea. So even though a name is function of an idea, that's the reason why it's such a tangible thing. Such a tangible thing. For instance, if I tell a kid Santa Claus is real, go ahead.
I think ideas could be I mean, I'm not opposed to that fourth category, but I think ideas could just be under the broad category of like things. Right? Like, I think ideas are a subset of like existence, right? Like thoughts and those things. It's not that they're immaterial. It's just that they're a more specified type of material, because they're emergent from this squishy substance that's a brain.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the definition of a noun, it's person, place, or thing, or idea, though it's not tangible. It's not. Yeah, so it's observable. So that's where it falls into that category. So going back to that, so what people don't understand
I want to jump in again. Sorry. I just want to jump in again. You slipped a phrase in there at the end. They said, no matter what, I think that's what you were saying, is all of those things, person, place, thing, idea, no matter what, it's observable. Did I hear you right on that?
Yes.
Okay, so is an idea observable?
Yeah, it is.
By everybody?
It's observable. Now, that's why I was. No, wait. It's a presumptuous thing. I'll explain like this. If you give me a second, I'll say it like this. If I tell a kid Santa Claus is real, then the idea is observable, but through his actions. So he'll bring out cookies. He'll bring out milk. The definition, you might not say like Muslims might say, hey, God doesn't say, Jesus doesn't say he's God, but the definition of him saying it is there. So by the same token, we can see the kid by his actions. We can observe that idea by the actions that he takes. That's why it's considered a noun.
Is it possible that there's an individual who does not share the same idea? Let's take, for instance, the Santa Claus being real, coming to give presents. Is it possible that two individuals, one who has that idea and one who doesn't have that idea, perform the exact same actions indistinguishable from each other? Is that possible in your eyes?
That is possible. But
Okay.
every
So
single
then,
action comes, yeah, that is correct. But every single action comes from an idea. So, in other words, where I'm going to, every single person is product of an environmental, idealistic point of view. What I mean point of view is a personal point of view. So every single person is not who they say they are. We're just a product of our environment. That's what we say. You know, in the Christian side, we say, if you're hanging around with somebody, we know who you are, or something like that. In Spanish, it's a different.
birds of a feather flock
Right,
together, that type of stuff.
and
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Joe, hang on just a second, Joe, because I
Mm-hmm.
think there's parts of what you're saying that are kind of, to me, what I would say just like mundane. Like for instance, the idea that we're shaped by our environment, right? The idea that like our personal history and the history of like the geography around us and so forth like plays into who we are as people, and like we're all multifaceted and yada yada yada. And like I'm cool with all of that. You know, maybe there's some nuance there we could pick apart, but I'm not sure that it's super relevant. And that's kind of why I'm jumping in at this moment is I want to get to the thrust here, man. I want to get to the tip of this spear. How does this connect to like Jesus and like me accepting Jesus Christ into my heart, or like God being real, or miracles happening? What's that connection for us, my friend?
So the connection is there's a passage in the Bible that says this: if you find yourself, you lose yourself. The reason why I understand it says that, and I'll say it like this: that's a personal opinion. The reason why he says he says like that, if you find yourself, you lose yourself, it's because he understands, and I'm just throwing it out there, that we can only be a perception of our environment. Like for instance, I don't know if you remember that story of a girl got raised with chickens. She was acting like a chicken. They were trying to get her out of that.
Hang on again, Joe. Hang on. I don't know that we need another story. I at least am following along with you pretty well. I think a lot of our community is too. I could be wrong, but what does that thing that you just brought up, that verse, if you find yourself, you lose yourself, what is the connection between that and like God existing, or like Jesus being the Son of God or rising from the dead or anything? Like that's the connection I'm not sure about. Like, are there some nice things that are said in the Bible? Like, sure, are there any things that are nice and beneficial and true that are exclusive to the Bible? That's where I'd say like no. So like again, this thing of like, if you find yourself, you lose yourself, is something to me that seemingly is very mundane. I've heard a lot of people talk about this in a lot of different ways for a long time. So like, what's the real big connection here? Just like if there's another bullet point or two, like skip a little to get us to the kind of where the end of your thought is here, because I'm having trouble figuring out.
I got you.
I'm following you, but I'm having trouble figuring out kind of what the value and purpose is. And I'm not trying to be a jerk with that, by the way.
I get you. No. I clearly understand. I know it sounds like I'm preaching. So the reason why I explain like this way is because every story has a backstory. But I'll jump to the point. So we presumptively assume that we're just who we are is who we are. And the reason why I say this is that that's not true. The true basis on our existence is we are a product of our environment. Now, going back to who Jesus Christ, that's what he teaches. The reason why it's so important to understand that the value of him is because, going back to the Muslims teach that Jesus Christ did not die on the cross. And I'm saying this because it goes back to the existence of Jesus Christ. So at the beginning of the story of the Torah, it actually, this is something that nobody really talks about. Genesis, if Adam and Eve sinned, then there's a premise to that story. And that premise of the story is Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15 actually says a prophecy of a woman having a child. That woman's going to step on the serpent's head, and that serpent's going to bite his heel. Basically, every single prophecy, every single person in the Old Testament, every single idea, every single story, is presumed on Genesis 3:15. The probability of him coming through that storyline is very impossible.
I'll let you get back. But like, if I remember correctly, the thing that you brought up in Genesis was the moment when God is chastising Adam and Eve, and he then proceeds to curse all three of them, Adam, Eve, and the snake, in various ways.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yes.
I don't see
Yeah.
anything prophetic there. I see God explicitly meting out punishment, right? Like God says,
Yeah.
like from now on, women will hate snakes and they'll like step on their heads because they don't like them. That's not really like a prophecy so much as it is just like me waking up today and going, ah, yes, clouds will be in the sky tomorrow
Okay.
because of precipitation, you know?
Do you have the Bible in front of you? If you look up Genesis 3:15.
I do. I do. I have mine right here. I can pull it up. I guess I probably could just pull it up on Google as well, but let me see if I can get to it quickly. It's been a while since I've done like those Bible challenges, you know, but okay, Genesis 3 and what verse 15? I will put enmity between you and the woman. Wait, let's go back. Let's go back a little. The Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you among all animals and among all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. And then just because I think it's really interesting, to the woman, God said, I will greatly increase your pangs in childbirth. In pain you shall bring forth children. Cool. And then it mentions that the husband will rule over her. So again, not really much of like a prophecy to me, so much as God just saying, here's the punishment for the bad things that you did. So what's the prophetic aspect of that?
Oh, Genesis 3:15. If you look at all its history, and you can, this is where it's gonna take you for a pretty good ride. So all its history is based on Genesis 3:15. All the Old Testament is based on Genesis 3:15. That's what I try to help people with, because there's like we go different places.
Hang on, Joe. Hang on, Joe. I think we're with you. There's a little bit of background noise, by the way, if you could help us out a little with that. But I feel like I understand what you're saying.
I'm glad you do, because I don't.
Okay, so it sounds to me, and I have a rebuttal after this, but I want to just ask a quick clarifying question, Joe. It sounds like kind of what you're saying is that particular verse is really like the foundation of like the rest of the narrative that ultimately prophesies Jesus is coming. Is that where you're getting at, Joe?
Sure about that. That's like your evidence for everything in the rest of the Bible. It's impossible to talk about the rest of the Bible with that as a premise.
That much we can follow.
So let me just real quick read you something here that I think might be a little confusing having that as the premise. What we've got is Genesis. I believe we're in chapter 32, verse 22. The same night, this is where Jacob wrestles with God. So the same night he got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children across the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream. Blah, blah, blah. Jacob was left alone. Blah, blah, blah. He saw a man, and Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When he saw that, he did not prevail against Jacob. He struck him on the hip socket, maybe his dick, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint when he wrestled them. Where's the connection between that and the enmity between women and snakes and offspring? And what's the connection there? Just help me out with that.
With that one? Okay. So basically, not every single story, like for instance, now, and I'll ask you this, since you asked me that question, but it's kind of fair to ask you this question on top of that one. But I'll tell you right now, the thing about it is that when Abraham was going to sacrifice his firstborn, do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it was his secondborn technically, but yeah, go ahead. Because he had Ishmael first.
But when he says it was a
just
promise.
The firstborn with his wife instead of his sex slave, but yeah.
Illegitimate son, I guess you could say. Not really.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll take that too.
Yeah. So anyways, when he's about to sacrifice his son, the reason why he puts him to the test is because it correlates to that first story, because God was going to give his firstborn, being Jesus, born. I mean born. I created firstborn being Jesus, so that story correlates with who Jesus is.
So I can see the parallels of that, but it's like, but this is the problem that I have, is it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the things that happened later chronologically are actually the things that the first things are modeled after. And that just seems like completely backwards to me when it comes to understand. If we see an event happen, in front of, and then 20 years goes by, and then another event occurs, and we go, my gosh, there's similarities between these two events. It's nonsensical to say that the second event was actually the model for the first event, right? And so, like, I see where somebody says, hey, there's similar tropes playing out between Abraham and Isaac and God the Father and Jesus the Son. Like, I get that, but for me, all that's not anything fascinating so much as it is just like, yeah, like, this is how we write stories. You know, people are smart enough to make sure that books are at least internally consistent. You know.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I had the same question. It sounds like here we're just pointing out that this this initial story, this origin story of how we got to be the way we are, which is, you know, what this part of Genesis is talking about, jives with some Jesus fan fiction that was written later on. Like, somebody else was like, hey, what if we take that and make it part of this? That's unsurprising to me. But I guess my question would be, so what? Like, what does this have to do with whether or not any of this is true?
Very good point.
So it basically, what you just said actually correlated with the frame of structure for evolution, because evolution does the same thing on its premise. Like, hey, let's fit this story with that story and see how it correlates. But
yeah, I would push back on that. I would say that, I would say evolution has given us, you know, kind of the framework for how we've understood evolution and continue to make progress on this has given us these things where we go like, oh snap, if this is true based on all of this stuff we have, then like this should be the case, or we should see this happening. And like, we do just all the time. Like, it's pretty much always worked out. And the times that it hasn't worked out has just been when people are just doing just bad evolution, I guess, to put it in the most bluntest of terms.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you mean, because there's a lot of bad evolution, there's a lot of bad Christianity, and in the assumptions that we have, not in the facts. So we can put facts, we can build facts within facts, like within a storyline. For instance, I'm going back to that storyline. The reason why that storyline to me is very important, and for people, like, this is what I push myself onto to help people understand that storyline, because there's two storylines. There's one that's factual and there's one that's a lie. I know that you guys believe that the one of evolution is to be factual, and I believe the one to be Christianity to be truth. Now,
let me ask you this real quickly before we move forward. Hold on a second. If I understood you, you just said there's two stories. Right. One can be true, but not both can be true. So Christianity is true or evolution is true. Is that what I heard you saying, right? And you believe in Christianity?
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly? Okay. So that in and of itself is not true. You could believe, and there are many Christians, right? There are many Christians who accept evolution. Nothing in evolution prevents the belief that Jesus Christ is holy or is God. They can work together, right? Francis Collins was the head of the Human Genome Project, ran the NIH, was the head member of the team that first sequenced the human genome, and is an evangelical Christian. But he himself has said, he didn't say screw it, but ignoring all other evidence, all of the fossils, all of the geological evidence, ignore all of that. The evidence in the human genome, in the DNA of all the animals that we've examined, is more than enough to establish that evolution is true, unequivocally. Yet he's a devout evangelical Christian. So I don't agree with your premise that it's an either or. I'm not saying that Christianity is true. I'm just saying one does not exclude the other.
Yeah.
I'll say it like this. I understand your perception, the way you said it, but that's a basis. That's a statement based on an opinion. And the reason why I say it like this is because, and not to put it down, what you said was pretty understandable. But the reason why is because my kids are behind me, so they're like chasing me around. The reason why is because, to understand what Christianity is, then you have to lay down its basis. The Bible teaches, and I'll say like this, that sin started, that death entered through sin of Adam and Eve. Now, if we were to assume true Christianity,
let's cut it short.
Let's stop. Let's stop right there. Go ahead, cross-examiner. What do you have to say
I'm going
to
to jump to the chase here. You know, if your position is evolution can't be true and comport with everything that's said in the Bible, I agree with you. If we are saying that man was created by magic out of nothing and didn't come from a process of evolution, I agree. To that extent, they're incompatible. What you appear to be doing, and I think we're getting to the point here, is saying, I've got mountains of evidence. I've got this scientific method that has produced medicine, that all of the biology is based on the presumption that evolution is true. It predicts things. We could disprove evolution. All you have to do to disprove evolution is prove that there was a Precambrian chicken, right? It passes all our muster. I've got that on one hand, and I've got a book says a thing on the other. And I've been told that the book says a thing is so important that it is part of my identity. And I've been terrified. I don't know when you started believing this, but many people are terrified since they were children that if they don't believe this book is true, that they're going to burn forever or be separated from God. So you have mountains on one side and a book says a thing on the other. And what I hear you saying is, well, book is right, everything else is wrong. That appears to be where you're going.
What I'm saying is that the way you're making your statement is not based on what the Bible teaches. I'm not saying that you like same way you stated.
I don't care what the Bible teaches. What I care about is what's true.
We haven't established that what the Bible teaches is something that we should have such, reverence and authority for, right? Like what we have, just like Cross-Examiner was just saying, like what we have is on one side a lot of material and information that corresponds with the world around us. And then we have things in the Bible that just flat out do not. And again, I agree with you and Cross-Examiner, it seems like, where we're all on the page of, hey, there is stuff in the Bible that if a lot of the stuff we know about, the scientific world around us is true, like they don't exactly work. And like, yeah, but I think that's a problem for the Bible because the Bible hasn't established its ability to actually distinguish between truth and falsehood. And so at the very best, what we have is this kind of, well, we're not sure space, which I guess is better than like 100% knowing all of it is flat wrong. But like we've just got better stuff out there that actually points us in the direction of like, hey, this is true. So why not just go with that and throw out this book says a thing?
I'll say it like this. I know Cross-Examiner is kind of like the reason why I get cut off before saying the statement. And I understand. I'm not trying to put that down. But I'm trying to say before I say the statement, it's kind of like you don't want those listeners to be confused by the statement that I want to make. But what I'm just saying is that.
Well, hold on. I want you to speak, and I do want to let you speak. I totally agree. Mm-hmm. But please don't presume to know why we were interrupting. That's entering into sort of telling me what I'm thinking. The reason I interrupted was I wanted to dispute what you were saying at the moment. I am fine with you making statements, making your argument, but we can't let you go on and on until we address the point of the matter. And if we skip over it and let you talk for another 30 seconds, 60 seconds, then we have to jump back in time. So please don't, insinuate motivations as to why I said, hey, let's jump in here and talk about this. Please do proceed.
The way you said, the way you said it was a lot clearer than what I did, than the way I said it. So I apologize about that. Okay. It's just that it's just to clear out this for the listeners. So going back to that, what the Bible says is that the difference is that death entered through the sin of Adam and Eve, and evolution teaches that death has always been a part of our lives from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And
do you really believe that death did not exist in the world until Adam and Eve sinned? Do you really believe that, Joe?
Yes.
How did they eat?
How did they eat? They ate of the trees, of the fruit, of the. But
that would be killing. That would be killing at the very least cells. Like, do you think cells are real? Do you think like bacteria and viruses and like Like I've got skin cells right here. I've got hair follicle cells and stuff, right? Like, do you believe those are real?
I'm not hearing them.
You still with us, Joe? We might have lost you.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Do you believe that cells are real? Do you believe cells are a thing?
I think that, again, there's a misunderstanding of that. I'll explain like this. The Bible says when Jesus Christ, when God told Adam, when they sin, he goes, I'm going to require sacrifice instead of,
Okay, I'm gonna jump in again. You were asked a pretty straightforward question.
Yeah, I'd love.
Are cells real? Like, I'm going to explain and then to talk about something else. That's what we call misdirection or pivoting. If I were in court, I would object. I'd say, hey, judge, can you make him answer the question? So I'm going to do that here. Do you accept that cells exist? Do you accept that
you're not
viruses and bacteria exist?
I'm asking. Joe, we're literally the reason that I brought this question up, Joe, is because truly, like, I just want some clarification, because it sounds like to me that you have set up a system in which you yourself would disagree with the conclusion that you're espousing, right? Like the idea that only when Adam and Eve committed that first sin did death start to exist in the world seems to be pretty contrary to not just what we know about the world now with our modern scientific understanding, but like even what people would have thought back then. Like, I'm pretty sure most people are comfortable with the idea of saying like, hey, if we go to an apple tree and it's got apples and we pick the apples and we just let them sit on the ground, they're going to like rot and stuff and like decompose. And that's due to like death, that's due to like the cells dying and then other bacteria coming along and like eating them, which, by the way, this is just a tangent. It's not really relevant exactly. But the reason that we have fossilized trees is because for a long time in the history of existence, we didn't have a bacteria that could like break down trees, which is really cool. Like, that's just really fascinating little piece of history. But anyway, totally irrelevant. But like, yeah, the reason we jumped in is because we think this question kind of shows a flaw in your conclusion based on like your own acceptance of things. So if you do believe in cells and they ate from the trees and the fruits and the so forth, like, isn't that death? Isn't there death already before the sin?
No, there's not death. So the way you assume to be death is you're talking about life with conscience. You're talking about life with understanding. There's a difference. When God said,
trees aren't conscious. I don't think we have good evidence to suggest that they are, but like, again, how do we know for sure?
He makes a division when he says, I require blood sacrifice. Blood sacrifice. He makes a division there. This is something, again, this is a flaw
animals
in your
eat
statement.
Other animals like still? Didn't that still happen? Like, how did a lion, God made a lion, and at one point Adam was like naming the animals and trying to figure out whether or not any of them would be good to have sex with, because apparently, I don't know, that's a weird part of the story, but doesn't matter. But like, God made a lion and God made a sheep, right? And the lion has incisors that are made for tearing meat apart, not for chewing plants. So if you're going to go down the road of lions were vegetarians before Adam and Eve, which I've heard a lot of people say, that again goes against the evidence. So I will say though, Joe, before we are going to let you go, I know you had more to say, man. And honestly, I have really, really valued this conversation with you. I thought you have been a pretty darn good interlocutor, man. A lot of times we just get people that just want to yell and don't really try to do some clarification. And I think you were for us. And unfortunately, I've got so many other good calls. I've got like 7, 8, 9 calls, it looks like, that are backing up. Which is great for us, but it does mean, unfortunately, we have to cut it short, man. But seriously, I really, really hope you will call us back, whether I'm on this show or Cross Examiner or any one of our phenomenal hosts, because I think you will also have a good discussion with them too, and I think that's what's really valuable. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Joe. I do greatly appreciate that. We were a little kind of disparate with some stuff, but
Yeah, I think it was confusing enough. I'm eager to see that Schoolhouse Rock episode of how the noun relates to anything it was saying.
yeah,
Maybe we could get Forrest
yeah.
Valkai to come in because he's the biologist, and we could create our own Schoolhouse Rock episode that
It-
ties it all together.
Not only do we need that, but we need to go ahead and volunteer Forrest to explain to us about like vegetarian carnivores. Like
Right.
that's what we need. We definitely need that. Forrest, if you're out there listening right now, brother, you know what to do. Get cracking. I mean, not like he doesn't already have a billion other
Right.
things to do.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
But kid, I love that. I love that call. I thought that was good.
He was awesome.
You know,
He
yeah,
was
seriously.
very, I mean, he was very respectful. It's not
Yeah.
the typical thing. And I genuinely mean, like, hey, we do have to jump in because you have to define terms. And part of it's, you know,
Absolutely.
the legal training where, you know, you're in a discussion and somebody says a thing, you have to say, wait, we have to define terms. We have to say this or this. And because if we move on, then we're going to forget about it. So
Yeah.
maybe when you call back, have it a little more focused as to what the point is, because I'm still, to be honest, I still don't know what your point was other than the Bible's true. And if it's true, then you have the question of, okay, if you're focusing on this story of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then you're asserting a situation where God is punishing people for doing something before they knew what was good, right, and wrong. It's not the tree of good and evil. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So is that even moral? So there's a whole bunch of stuff to tie up there. Maybe pick one and then call back.
Yeah. I agree. Well, folks, I am legally obligated, and I say that because we have a reformed lawyer here. I am legally obligated to read these wonderfully amazing and generous super chats from our fantastic fans and community out there. We've got $5 from Gayest Husky. Science and religion always admit when they don't know so that they can constantly learn and grow. Religion pretends like it already knows. I think that sums it up super duper well, Gayest Husky.
And I want to point out that super chat came in long before this last call, and it is on point. It's a prophecy.
Oh my gosh. Gayest Husky may just be our new ACA prophet. We're not sure, folks. We don't know yet. Wait till we write some books about it and, you know, maybe like 100 years or something. Anyway. We've got $5 from Tau Software, who is also a new member. Thank you so much for doing that. Go ahead and spam the chat with all those super awesome emojis, and all the other members join in too, so everybody else feels FOMO and they also join, because you can do it for like 99 cents, real easy. But Tau Software says, shout out to the homies in the AXP 24/7 stream. Come join us sometime. And yeah, seriously, that's going on all the time. There's actually one for Talk Heathen as well too, where it's just, you know, past shows and hosts you probably haven't even heard of, and some great calls. So definitely go check that out. In fact, there are some other ways you can support us here if you like what we do, or if you don't like what we do and you just want to support us. I feel like we'll accept that. Like if you just really don't like us but you want to become a member, like I think it works. I think
I'm not proud. I'm not proud.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, earlier we were talking about getting on knees, so I think we never mind. Anyway, we have a brand new and very super cool way to support the ACA. You can buy a custom engraved brick and actually become part of the library's legacy, like literally a part of it, you guys. So go check out this video.
Have you ever wanted to make a permanent impact on the atheist community of Austin? Help support our space for free thought by buying a custom engraved brick to be laid on the building grounds to help raise funds for improvements. Our building has stood as a beacon for years, bringing people together. But 3 years of emptiness due to the pandemic have taken a toll, leaving it in disrepair. Help us restore this hub of connection and support by buying a brick. Moses had his stone tablets, but we're doing our own version. Join our brick fundraiser and let your engraved messages stand the test of time, minus commandments. Visit tiny.cc/ACA bricks for more information.
Was it Peter who said, upon this rock, I will build my church? Upon your brick, folks, we will build our library. So I think, honestly, I think ours is a little bit better for humanity as a whole. Maybe I'm
Absolutely.
biased, but you also can become a channel member, just like Tau Software, for as little as 99 cents a month. You can click that join button below the video, and this will give you access to all those super duper awesome chat emojis. And I've been told, I don't know exactly if this is true because I'm not all in the YouTubes and the whatnots, but I've been told if we get more members, we might be able to expand our emojis, get new ones. I don't know. You guys, you know where to contact us, atheist-community.org. So let us know, or just in the comments below. But you can also send a super chat with a question or comment. And again, we will be legally obligated to read it live on air during the show, as long as it fits within like the terms of service and then like the general, kind of mission and focus of the ACA. We're just not going to let you spout just slurs or hatred. So I hope that's clear to all of our audience. And I hope nobody in our audience even wants to take that opportunity. So, but also, this is something super duper cool that we are doing that is new, and I love it. It is a great way to connect, especially in your local communities. So available on our website, atheist-community.org, are printable call-in flyers. Okay, so you see it right there. Super duper easy. People can just grab a slip and call the show. So post these with permission to community bulletin boards so people know that they should call our show and defend their faith, talk about what they believe and why they believe it. I think this is awesome. I love being able to be here and on so many other wonderful shows online. But I am so thankful and lucky that I have some people in my area that I physically get to be around and talk about, God and religion and science and all this stuff. It is awesome. And this is a really, really cool way that can kind of help you get connected with that. So we are gonna shake things up a little bit, and I actually want to go out to Washington and talk with an atheist. Jenny, she, her, is asking about when is it a good time to pick an argument with believers. I think this is a really interesting topic, and yeah, you're on with SR and the Cross Examiner. Jenny, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I hope both of you guys are doing really good tonight.
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. So is that kind of the gist of your question? Was there more to it you wanted us to expand on?
That's basically the gist of it. Because I have definitely, I don't want to give too many details because I don't want to make this about myself. But part of my profession does require me talking to a lot of different people of a lot of different viewpoints, and a lot of times I am kind of roped into the God conversation unwillingly. And sometimes it's easy to tell when it's a good idea to just cut it off. But at the same time, I know that because of the place we live, the place we live in America, how ingrained Christianity and religion is to everything, really.
Yeah.
I know that I can't, as an atheist and as a transgender woman, I don't feel comfortable just being silent all the time. So when is a good time to not be?
Yeah, I think some great points you brought up. Cross Examiner, do you wanna shake a shot at it? Oh, you're muted, man. That's okay. We've all done it. Trust me. Richard did it last week. Johnny does it like every.
Johnny P. Angel. Yeah, I'm now a professional. I'm now a veteran. So I say the first rule is always when you feel safe. That's the number one rule, because we live in a society, even though we are removed somewhat from the ages where you could, legally be killed for expressing your atheism. We still live in a society where the mere expression of a lack of belief is enough to anger people, enough to either violence or shunning, things like that. So number one rule, as long as you're safe. Number two, I would ask yourself, what's the goal here? Now, a lot of times when you get into discussions with people about their strongly held beliefs, you may not change their mind, but you may give them something to think about. But if you're in a situation where a lot of people are listening, like a show like this, even though you don't change the mind of your debater, let's say, that you're debating, you may have many people listening in who aren't as vested and don't have their backup, and they may hear your points, and that may help persuade them to be less fanatical or less fundamentalist. So make sure you know what your goals are, because if you're just doing it to make yourself feel better, but it's not really going to achieve anything, then maybe decide to take a pass or do whatever you would normally do to bite your lip. But if you feel safe and you think it's going to achieve something, and that something may just be you feel better, it's safe, and I'm just going to feel better standing up for myself, by all means do it. Those would be my 2 rules.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on
That makes
that,
sense.
Jenny? Before I shout anything, what do you think?
I mean, to be honest, that makes a lot of sense. I'm trying to think back at like some of the times where I have either like avoided confrontation or continued the confrontation and tried to like think of what my mindset was behind that. And do you mind if I give you an example?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at the time, I was working at a department store. I was a in-store seller of the phones there, but we didn't work for the same company. It's a bit of a long story. I had just caught in for my break. I was actually having a great day. I was even like singing a song under my breath because I like doing that when I'm at work. It gets me focused.
And then religion showed up, right?
A very nice lady approached me and at first was like, "Oh my gosh, you seem so nice and like you're so friendly at work." And I'm like, "Hey, you have to do something to keep the day going." And then she starts going into this story about how her partner at one point would let her go out with people no matter what and let her do anything else as long as she came back home. And I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. I didn't know that they had like open relationships as common then." And then all of a sudden she drops it. "Son, I'm talking about the Lord."
That was
Love
the
it.
partner.
Which honestly was
yeah.
gonna. She then went through a whole spiel, and then she started like talking about gender. And I was like, "Ma'am, I mean no disrespect. If you genuinely believe all this, I completely like all power to you. I do not. I am transgender, and I do not feel comfortable with this." And the last thing she said before walking away was how God made me how I was and made me the gender I was supposed to be. So, I called my boss and I was like, "Yeah, I'm going home." After that, I was like, "I'm done today."
Yeah, and I think I would say, and this is just my personal, beliefs on this, Jenny. I think you handled that, really well. And most of my thoughts are honestly copy and paste from Cross Examiner. I very, very happy. The first thing he said was, make sure you're safe, because I totally agree. I think that is just the number one freaking thing. And that isn't always super duper easy to know, unfortunately. Sometimes it's like, well, I'm safe in this sense, right? Like nobody's gonna just outright attack me here at work necessarily. But are you safe in the sense of you're not going to see any repercussions from voicing your opinion? I know in my neck of the woods in Tennessee, there are absolutely, undeniably places that will let you go if they find out that you're not a Christian. They use the wonderful magic of hiring and firing people to make it not really about the fact that you're not Christian, because then that would be discrimination and that would just be outright illegal, right? But yeah, it's just weird how so many of these people are seemingly the top 5 employees consistently when they do reviews of people's work and so forth, and then yet they're just suddenly let go like 2 weeks after mentioning that they don't go to church. Just weird how it's totally coincidental, I'm sure. But yeah, I think your safety and your comfortability is always the number one thing. And then definitely, again, what are the results you're trying to achieve? What is the goal of you engaging further? I can definitely tell you, I've had conversations at the grocery store checkout line. I've also avoided conversations at the grocery store checkout line. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't go so well in both scenarios. Unfortunately, there is no perfect answer because, I've heard some people say oh, what I try to do is I try to have like a really good one-liner to leave a conversation. It's like in the old days, you could say, I guess parking meters still exist somewhere, but long ago you could always end a conversation by just being like, oh shoot, I parked by a meter, like, oh, I didn't have a lot of quarters at the time. I gotta run, or oh gosh, I think I left my stove on, just something like that. But again, unfortunately, Jenny, there's going to be those people that even when you try to politely get out of a conversation like that, they are still deeply offended and take some they get in that victim mindset very quick. I have seen, unfortunately. But I think if you follow those two kind of main points that cross-examiner was talking about, that safety and your comfortability and kind of what is my goal and is this the best way of achieving it, I think you're probably going to find that you come out of the majority of situations similar to the one you described to us, which again, I think you handled really well, and you stood up for yourself and you didn't let people just berate you with hateful or bigoted things. But also you weren't a dick about it. You weren't a jackass, which is nice too. And I think there's great value in that. Not to say that there aren't times to be a jackass. There sure freaking are. But I hope that people are just taking a little bit more of an effort to understand the effectiveness and kind of the repercussions of doing that. So I know I kind of rambled there a little bit, Jenny, but give us some last thoughts, and then we'll go on and grab some other calls.
Well, honestly, the only thing I have to say really is thank you, because not only am I going to be able to use what I've talked about and what we've been able to talk about today in that sense, I'm also a stand-up comedian and I have to deal with confrontation in that side too. I feel like this is just going to help me in just life in general. And I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for taking my call. You two have an amazing day. And thank you to everyone in the chat as well that was sending good wishes. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, we've got a wonderful
community.
So much. Thank you, Jenny. We really do appreciate that. And that's great. That's great to hear you're a stand-up comedian, Jenny. We've got, actually, I have noticed we have a good bit. I think it's well known that there's a lot of magicians in the skeptic, secular, atheist kind of community. There's actually a good bit of comedians as well. And I don't know if that's like an indication of how great we are or how we're better than everybody else. I'm not going to state that. I'm not going to make that claim.
I will. No.
We've got all the best people. We've got the magicians and the comedians. We're crushing it, you guys.
Yeah, we are.
Step your game up, religious communities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of your one-liners to get out of something, this has stuck with me ever since I saw the movie in the 80s called Better Off Dead. I don't know if you've seen it, an 80s teen comedy. There's a line in there that's, I've got to go. My Christmas tree is on fire. I use that all the time because it shocks people, because you're not even in your house and you say it and you leave and they're just like, what the heck? So
and
maybe throw something like that at them. Smoke bomb gone.
The farther away that it is from actual Christmas,
right,
I think makes it better.
Yes.
Just, it's like March and you're like, oh no, my Christmas tree's on fire. Because if somebody asks you, it's like, well, dude, conifers don't stay moist that long. At this point, of course it's going to catch on fire.
Yeah, it's totally consistent.
Anyway, we have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form, folks. So go check out tiny.cc/AEN podcast. You can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, the Nonprofits, and others on one great channel. And it is super duper easy. You can put it in the background while you're cooking and cleaning or thinking of great one-liners to get out of conversations with pushy believers. That is also a possibility. And I'm just going to move right along here, because up next is one of my favorite things here. So visit our store for our limited edition t-shirt, folks. And this month's t-shirt is All of the Evidence for Your God, fits in the box below. Now, if you take a careful look, you're going to notice something there, folks. You're going to notice that there isn't a box, okay? And it's almost like what we're trying to say is there isn't any evidence to put in the box anyway. So why not go to tiny.cc/merch ACA and you can get that now. You can also get all kinds of other things, beanies, phone cases, hoodies, all kinds of wonderful stuff, folks. So go do that and wear it everywhere. And again, maybe just have some of those one-liners to get out of those conversations with pushy believers. I think that would be helpful. But this is the part that I love so much, and I'm always so excited to do this. We are going to send a massive thank you to the wonderful crew who puts this show together every week. So put those faces up. Look at that. We got like all the cameras up today. We have always a wonderful, wonderful group of people that are doing such hard work. Whereas Cross Examiner and myself just kind of get to come here and screw around, which is great. Honestly, I don't want any more work on my plate. I don't need that much responsibility. But yeah, those are the people that make it happen. So in the chat, definitely shout out, say nice things to them. I don't know. Do we have emojis of the crew? That would be a good thing too. Like Greg's face, just like really large or something.
Yeah,
anyway,
get some at least the crew critters, right?
That's right.
We need some crew critter emojis.
That's serious. That has to be the first ones we do.
Yeah.
Those are the most.
That cat lying down. That's
yeah. Those are the most important of the crew. We know where the work really gets done. So we are going to read a couple of quick super chats and we're going to go into some calls. We do still have open lines, folks, and we've got time. Okay. So if you do want to talk with us, now is the best time to do it, because that way we can actually get into the nitty gritty as opposed to just like busting through them in the last 10. But so 512-991-9242 or from the computer, tiny.cc/call-AXP. And we've got £5 from Robin Loves Color saying, living in England, fundamentalist views are pretty rare. It's honestly wild hearing these American callers and their extreme fundamentalist views. Well, Robin Loves Color, I can tell you, living in America, it is freaking weird sometimes. It is really weird hearing what some people believe, especially when you find out, like, I don't know, their church or their headquarters is like a block away from you. You're like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Fern Lovebond gave $2 to say, as a U.S. citizen, I'm sorry, Robin Loves Color. So I love that we kind of had a little back and forth, but don't worry, Fern. Don't feel too responsible for some of these more ridiculous individuals. I want to tell you, Robin, there's a bunch of us here in the United States that are trying to push back on that. So hopefully we're making some progress. I think we are. We've got $5 from Miranda Rensberger saying, theist, have you heard about Jesus? Me. Oh, my cat is calling. I have to go. I love it.
You got to do what the cat says.
That is great. Yes, that is true. That is true. If you anger the kitty cat, you will have a very bad home life. That is what I have heard. So with that, though, we are going to come down to my neck of the woods. We're going to talk to Maxie, him in Tennessee, who has something interesting they want to talk about. Sounds like you don't think that beliefs are as important as actions. So, hey, Maxie, you're talking with the Cross Examiner and Secular Rarity. What you got?
Well, okay. Let me say a couple of things first.
Oh, you're a little quiet. Can you get a little closer to your microphone for me?
I'm as close as I can get. Can you hear me fine?
It's cutting in a little out a little bit. I'm gonna throw you back in queue just for a second. I know our wonderful call screeners will help you out. We do want to talk with you, Maxie. I think you've got something interesting, so definitely we'll let them figure that out for just a second. And we will grab another theist. Actually, we've got Dave up in Connecticut. It sounds like you're asking about when historical fiction was developed. I'm not sure. What's your question, Dave?
Yeah, so I don't know if it was this show or a previous show I was watching, but you kind of brought up the concept of different books like The Hobbit and how it might relate to the Bible, how there's consistency internally.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is that, well, actually, what would your position be that the Bible is basically a fiction that has history kind of entwined in it,
Yeah.
or that it's just okay. So that's kind of the concept.
Yeah. So
how
yeah.
much?
Hang on real quick, Dave, because I think I think I'm following along with you. You're kind of asking like, are there parts of the Bible that are like actually historical, and are there parts of it that like are fiction? Was this something that was written from the beginning as like a purposeful, fairy tale type thing, or was this something where people were trying to actually, explain what's going on and stuff? So like, yeah, there's undeniably a lot of history in the Bible, right? I think it's ridiculous when somebody who's, on my side of the aisle, the non-religious side, right, says like, oh, there's no history. That's very silly. The good news is I don't tend to actually hear too many like atheists, agnostics, and so forth that say that. What I do tend to hear though is on the other side, on the believer's side, the Christian side, I tend to hear people make the claim more of like the Bible is the most historically accurate book that's ever been written by man, or the Bible is the most historically accurate book that society has, or so on and so forth. The things that I find that are historical in the Bible are the vast majority of the time very trivial. And the times where they're more important, it seems to me they're wrong. And so that's where I have a problem with it. Now, with that being said, just to finish off the little bit of nuance here, and then I'll give it back to you, Dave. I don't necessarily, though, believe that the Bible was written in this like historical fiction context. And the reason I say that is because that doesn't really seem to be the focus of the aspects of the Bible that are more biographical, right? Those areas of the Bible, individuals were seemingly, at least, I'm going to try to be as charitable as possible. They were seemingly trying to, as accurately as they could, describe the events that they had witnessed or participated in or heard about or whatever. But that doesn't mean that they aren't mistaken, right? I don't necessarily believe, it's like purposeful lies, although there are books of the Bible that are attributed to letters of Paul that we know for a fact Paul did not write, so it's like maybe that person was trying to be a little bit more devious with it, but like other people, like not so much. So I just don't think it's this one cut and dry, the whole freaking Bible goes into one category of junk or like perfect history. I think it's more nuanced than that, and it's worth knowing that. So I'll shut up for a second. What you got from all of that, Dave?
Yeah, no, I definitely, like that more nuanced approach. So one of the biggest questions, right, depends on whether the resurrection is historically accurate, of course, and that's probably something that you hear all the time. So with that kind of question, what would that be something that was embellished in your? I'm just trying to understand more your view, and then maybe talk about it more.
Sure.
So is that something that's embellished, like an embellished concept? There was a man, and it became embellished, or would that be? I'm
gonna let cross-examiner answer first, but real quick, I want to know, Dave, do you think like Jesus, like for real, tangibly person crucified on the cross, dead for 3 days, rose again? Do you believe that? Because that's always really important for us. We want to know what our callers believe and kind of how they got to that. So before we answer and give our thoughts on it, do you believe that is true? That is a historical fact?
Oh, okay. Can I ask a quick question? Would that change how you view me as a person? It would be just
not for me. I'm not going to speak for cross-examiner, but I would
not at all.
I would wager a bet that no, it's not going to change at all. But this show really is kind of focused on believers calling in and saying like, hey, here's kind of the stuff that I believe and why I believe it. I think when we kind of get our understanding, we'll kind of give some reasons as to why we do or don't accept things. But I just want to hear your viewpoint so that we're all on the same page.
Okay, cool. So yes, I do believe and I believe that he was resurrected, all that stuff. And I take the position that it's not like some kind of alien thing or some kind of magical or scientific trick, but more that the God of the universe had a son named Jesus, and because of their connection and his ability, he resurrected. So
Cool.
yes, I take that position. Yep.
Cool. So yeah, cross-examiner, do you remember what Dave had asked? I think
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
yeah,
Is
please.
this an embellishment? If not, if it is not true that this is an honest and truthful and accurate representation of what actually happened, how did we get here? How did we get this book that says this? I'll start with sort of a note. One of the episodes I'm going to be doing with my podcast asks this question: could I introduce the Bible as evidence at trial as evidence of the truthfulness of the claims that the Bible makes? And the answer is no. And the reason is a lot, but the big one is hearsay. We don't know who wrote it. We don't know anything about it. And it's stories from copies of translations of copies from oral tradition, etc. So I start from that reality. I don't think there's any serious Christian scholar, like when I say Christian scholar, I mean Christians who are scholars. I don't believe there's any serious Christian scholar that would dispute that. We don't know who wrote the Gospels. We don't know what their relationship was to anybody who may have claimed to have witnessed those events. So I start from there. And then I ask myself, what's more likely? That this is all true, and it happened in the numbers that some of the Gospels say, where, hundreds, if not 1,000 people saw it, and there were zombies in the streets and all that, and only 4 people decided to write it down at least 40 years after the fact. Nobody ran and wrote all of this down like it would be the biggest news ever. Or over time, we've got a lore that has built up, much like King Arthur or Robin Hood or any current figure. Look at North Korea, right? The dear leader made 18 holes in one the first time he played golf. That is a fact that's distributed around. And so in North Korea, that is accepted as true because now that was there's more malice there. They're trying to paint this picture, but we see in modern times, just look at Joseph Smith and the Mormons. We've seen this time and time again. And I think it was, I forget who mentioned it on an earlier episode of the Atheist Experience, who said, it's like a fish story. When I first tell the story, I caught a fish that was like this, and then it got away. And then the fish just keeps getting bigger each time I tell it. If I add into that I told somebody who told somebody who told somebody who then wrote it down, and then it was mistranslated, etc., I can't come back to any sense of, yeah, this is reliable. If you add on to the fact that it's reporting on things that are miraculous, now all of a sudden I need much more than just these rumors and whispers that were written down a generation or more after the time they happened. So I don't think there's malice involved. I think it is one part trying to keep the story alive, one part fan fiction, one part trying to accumulate power. I mean, I think there's an element of that. Hey, if you look at the progression of the Gospels from the first one to the fourth one, it is a lesson on how to increase the dramatic effect and to cover for holes in the earlier ones. So if you look at all of that, I think it's a combination of all those things. Do I think there's a conspiracy or anything like that? No, I just don't think it's a reliable historical document with respect to the resurrection, because there is no evidence. We don't have eyewitnesses. We don't even know who wrote these documents down. So I would not be able to introduce this into court on the lowest level of threshold of trying to introduce evidence, and that speaks a lot to me.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add on that, Dave, before I give the mic back to you, is just that when it comes to historical understandings, right, of the world around us, right, and where we've come from and how it was, one of the things that we do is we kind of separate between these very mundane claims and these very extraordinary claims. And we do this for good reason, right? It's not to say that we just categorically rule things out that are extraordinary. There are extraordinary things that have happened in the past. But the likelihood, right? The probability that something that we have absolutely no documentation of ever occurring now in our time when we have the best ability to record, document, and repeat extraordinary events, right? The absence of having that information now makes it more reasonable that in the past that stuff wasn't going on as well, right? Like when we drop a bowling ball today, every single freaking time we do it, it falls and hits our toe. I'm going to go ahead and say probably in the past, when we didn't have bowling balls or bowling alleys or bowling pins, if somebody held a rock that was heavy and they dropped it, it's probably going to hit their toe, right? Like, so yeah, there's those extraordinary things that we just don't have any good reason to believe are happening around us currently, right? So why would we have reason to believe that they happened 10,000 years ago when, just like Cross Examiner was saying, we really don't even have, you know, claims from people who say they were there. We just don't. We don't have eyewitness, and we need at least that level, right? So I know we shouted a lot at you, Dave. We want to give you some time to talk back to us. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, two big things. One, and I gotta let's see, which one do I want to go with first? So I think one of the big things that there's two kind of different Christian scholars. There's the higher criticism, and then the ones that kind of stick to more, let's give this a chance. And so I think that with kind of the ones who go from the approach of basically assuming, let's assume this is not a miraculous thing that could take place, therefore we're going to date things based on that. And so it's very important to make sure, like in my mind, that kind of the dating system, you have two options. You have the option of this unique miraculous event did take place, what are likely dates there? And then, well, miraculous is unlikely to happen because of, you know, Hume's argument, what you just basically said. We're not going to give it kind of the leeway. Therefore, what are the dates in that case? And then, you know, so there's that. And then the other thing is exactly what you said about kind of like Hume's argument. And I guess it's a unique argument. It's really thought out. I think it's probably the most devastating thing to ever affect Christianity. And I think it's pretty cool that he came up with it. But I think that if you were to assume that there is a God, then something like this God coming to earth thing would happen once.
Okay, so let's stop right there, Dave. Because I kind of, and this may shock some of our viewers and listeners, with that last thing you just said, I kind of actually freaking agree, man. But the problem is that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Like Cross Examiner and I are up here saying, hey, man, one thing that kind of points us in the direction of this stuff not being accurate, right, is, you know, we really don't have any good demonstration of these particular things, like people rising from the dead, right? There are sometimes people who are in like comas. We think they're dead and like their heart stopped and their lungs aren't working and we think they're dead, but they're not actually dead, right? But like nobody's really past that threshold of like brain death, just decomposing in the ground for a bit to coming back. So we don't have any good evidence or examples of that. But another big thing, I think, for both of us, me definitely, is this like underpinning of all these things, all these really cool claims that we don't have good, you know, demonstration of currently. The underpinning of all of that is that, hey, actually, there's this other thing that exists that has all these fantastic powers, and they can do all kinds of things. And if you just agree to that from the beginning, then like all of this other stuff makes sense, because I don't think we have any good reason to agree to that from the beginning, right? I mean, happy to do, and I love to do this. You know, I love to do internal critiques. I love to say, okay, cool. You know, just like J. Mike always says, I'll give you all the toys to play with. Let's assume your God is real. Let's go down that route. But if really what we're doing is we're having the conversation of trying to say like, do we have good reason to accept this thing? Do we have good reason to say, all right, let's check the box that says God existing is more likely than not, right? Because again, like from there, I totally understand. Like I'm so with you. The idea of parting the Red Sea, the idea of, mountains jumping into oceans, like loaves and fishes. Like, come on, brother. I'm totally with you there. Absolutely. If God's real, he can do all that crap, But
absolutely. Yep.
if really what we're talking about that is the foundation for all of this is like, hey, do we have good reason to believe that God is real with all these attributes? Then we can't just go, yeah, but if you accept that that's the case, then all this other stuff makes sense. Because really what we're doing there is we're just avoiding that conversation, right?
Well, I think the reason why I'm bringing it up is just simply because with that assumption made, then dating and all the kind of the arguments that you call yourself cross-examiner, it could change some of those arguments, those presuppositions, because of that. Yes, because of the dating system. So, but I understand what you're saying.
Explain that a bit more, Dave. I'm not sure I'm following you on
are you
that
saying
train of
that
logic.
there's question amongst the scholarly community as to when the Gospels were actually authored?
And if God actually does exist, that would change the dates of when
I think he's saying that there's two dating systems that scholars use, and scholars who use one dating system will date them earlier than others. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm just curious as to what learning more about that, because my understanding, sorry, just one second. My understanding is one of the methods of dating is there are historical events that are documented in the books, and then we know when those events happen because lots of people wrote about those, and then we see them mentioned in a particular book, and we know that's when the book must have been written after that. Did I lose my internet?
No, you're still going.
Okay,
You're doing
good.
great.
The camera froze. So that's my understanding of the basic method of, this mentions this war. We know the war took place on date X. So this must have been written on or after that time. So that's one of the main ways of dating them. I'm unaware of any other methods they use.
There's also the parameter of the upper end. So what is
any thoughts?
We gave it must be after this time, but there's also kind of parameters that help with what is it before, and so that's kind of the parameter that I'm kind of asking, or looking at. Which
I think we often when we have these datings, especially for these ancient texts, like they're not like 100% exact in the sense of saying like this was done on June 12th of, this particular year or whatever, right? Like it's normally, if I remember correctly, like Mark is what, like, is it 60 to 80, and like the writings of Paul are like 40 to 55 or something, like somewhere along that, like it's normally there's a decent range, but not one that's so broad that it's like, well, this was written somewhere between 0 and 250, like, so I kind of feel like we do account for that. I'm not sure how the dating method is super duper altered by people's beliefs, unless they're just being like biased from the beginning. And please explain.
I'll give you a specific example. For example, there's this prophecy that supposedly Jesus made, the Olivet Discourse, saying that the temple would be destroyed, XYZ. And in Hebrews, for example, it doesn't say the temple was destroyed. I know it's an argument from omission, but something big like that in a book called Hebrews about the sacrifices, all that, you would think that it would say, oh, man, this just happened 10 years ago.
Dave, I don't know that you want to say that, though, man. I mean, I'm kind of with you again. Like I'm kind of on your side here with that argument, but I just I think that cuts a lot harder and deeper on your side than it does ours, man. Like, I think if we take that kind of, colloquial kind of logic, kind of general mundane logic, like, I'm kind of with you, man. And again, like, let's put it into the modern times. Like, something massively, insanely ridiculous happens. Like, I don't know, say somebody who owns some massive car company decides to just shoot a car randomly past Saturn, like something like that. I was just pulling something completely out of my ass here. No relation to anything in real life. But like, I would assume that, yeah, people would probably talk about that shit on Twitter, man. Like, yeah, probably. Right. Though them not saying stuff doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen. But again, if we use that kind of understanding, I just feel like the Bible's on a lot shakier ground, man. All of the miracles in the Bible really only have like one attestation. And one of the reasons I say that is because it's pretty obvious that they're building on Mark explicitly. Like, they literally, it's word for word. There are entire passages that are word for word copy from the oldest, book of Mark that we have. So like, it feels to me like if we take that argument and you go, hey man, in this other part of the Bible, if they really wrote this after the fall of the temple, it's kind of confusing they didn't mention it more. Yeah, I'm with you, but then what's your answer to the zombies rising when Jesus was crucified, or the veil being torn, or Jesus being crucified and rising from the dead? Do you see where I'm coming from here, Dave?
Oh, I definitely do. And I think with like the zombies things, I don't know, is that in Luke? I'd have to
I think it's in Luke. Yeah. And I was being a little crass with that too. I understand, not trying to poison the well or anything, but like it does say people rose from the dead, and that's pretty much a zombie, right?
Right. But their appearance may not have looked like zombies. In the case of not seeing them come out of the grave, if they weren't in the graveyard, they might have mistaken them for just regular people, and then later on be like, oh, again,
just using the simple colloquial, follow through that we were talking about a minute ago. Like, wouldn't you at least think somebody would have written and been like, hey man, Bill's back. Haven't seen that dude since he got smashed in the head by a donkey, 3 weeks ago, and like died, man. Wasn't that terrible? Remember how we buried him and it was so sad? But then we had that awesome festival celebrating his life afterwards. Like, we actually do have, letters from people thousands and thousands of years ago. One of my favorite examples that I got from a wonderful, wonderful scholar, Dr. Joshua Bowen, has some fantastic books out there. Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament, one of my favorites. But he brings up this example of literally a wife who is writing a letter to her husband that is a trader and a merchant, and she's like chastising him. It's just literal mundane everyday stuff. Like, like today, like somebody would say to their partner and be like, hey man, you didn't get the milk. We were out of milk, like also, did you call so-and-so to change our insurance or whatever? Like, that's what this letter is. It's literally just the wife saying, like, husband, like, you kind of screwed us over. You didn't give us enough stuff, like to eat and to sell while you're gone. Like, get your ass back home so that we can, you and us and our kids can survive, So like, how do we have that? And with like dozens of stuff like that, but then we've only got like these 4 books. We've only got just this, and they all directly copy from each other. It just feels like this puts it more on shakier grounds. It puts your side just less secure.
Well, a couple things. Dating, every 100 years you go back, less and less people wrote. So 2,000 years ago, less and less people wrote. It also would have to have been preserved. So those 2 things have to happen. But yeah, it's a big question. But the the question of Christianity is a big question too. So to kind of explore it and kind of, I'm doing give it the best, what do they call it? Give it its best. I forgot the word, but basically I'm giving the Bible a chance while you were kind of saying I'm not going to give it a chance, and that's cool. And the two of us together hopefully will come closer and closer to truth. And I think that's kind of cool.
Well, I do like that goal, but I will just push back a little bit and say I think we have given the Bible a chance. I think really that's where our criticisms are coming from, is that we really have, investigated, right? I mean, I can't prove to you that I'm genuine. I can't prove to you that I have an open mind, really, but like I really do feel like that's what I've done. And because of that, we've concluded otherwise. Cross-examiner, is that kind of how you come to it too?
Absolutely. I have read the Bible multiple times, front to back, even through the begats and the crop harvesting and all of the boring parts. And I agree with you completely that we are giving it a chance. And I take each claim on its own. So the Bible claims that there was the city and it was called X, and I can verify that with other sources. Okay, I'll accept that. Now it claims that this person existed. Okay, well, for argument's sake, let's say they existed. Then they say that magic happened, and now I say, okay, well, what's the evidence? And it's stories upon stories that are using most methods dated to have been authored in Rome between 700 and 110 AD. So that would not stand up for any other thing. You wouldn't rely on that for any other aspect of your life, but you rely on it here, or you want to rely on it. And I think the note you said about, I want to give it a chance, or I am giving it a chance and you are not, I think that's kind of telling. I don't give claims a chance. I become convinced of the truth of a claim after I have been presented with sufficient evidence. There's no giving it a chance. I would say, to sort of wrap things up, I get where you're coming from, that you can twist yourself into a pretzel to say, well, maybe they would have mentioned this, and this may be the dating method, but you have to do that so many different ways to even be able to say these things were authored closer to the time, not even by eyewitnesses. They don't even say they're eyewitnesses. They say that they're reporting with other people. So we don't even have eyewitness testimony. And any lawyer will tell you eyewitness testimony is the worst form of evidence that we have. And it's very, very susceptible to cross-examination and misinterpretation, all that sort of stuff. But just to move it closer to the events and to give it a little bit more standing, you have to twist yourself into all of these. Meanwhile, we have the bigger question going on. It would be akin to me saying, here's the video of the murder, here's the weapon, here's the confession and all this. And then the defense counsel's over in the corner saying, but you don't know what he had for lunch that day. And don't you think you would have asked that question, or he would have mentioned it because it took place in a restaurant? I'm like, maybe, but I think you're missing the point here. Like, we don't have take a look at the big picture. And so I guess that's my summation would be, take a look at the big picture and focus on those big things, because really the core of it is it's claiming that I need to believe this or I'm going to go burn in hell. And what evidence do I have of that? I don't care about when the temple was destroyed so much. I only care about it when people start arguing about it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to end this call, Cross-Examiner. And Dave, I know we've said a bunch of stuff that I'm sure you have some just a litany of responses to. And we do actually want to hear them again in the future, Dave. I thought this was a really good call, man. I thought we had a great conversation. Unfortunately, just we've got a time limit, and eventually the crew wants to go home. So we're gonna let you go for today, man. But please do give us a call back in the future. And
yeah,
talk
absolutely.
With, either
please
us.
do, Dave.
Yeah, we've had some good calls already, and I gotta say, I wanna keep that going. But yeah, the crew is letting me know that the vast majority of them are already from home, because
I was going to say, I think we lock them in their homes, don't we?
It's good.
Don't let them out.
Well, we can't confirm or deny that
That's right.
on the air.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
But what I can confirm is that the end of this month, on October 29th, 2023, there will be a live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience from the Free Thought Library. So if you happen to be in the Austin area, October 29th, 2023, come and join us. Hang out with all of the wonderful people that are going to be there. And Talk Heathen will actually be hosted by Christy Powell and Johnny P. Angels, two veterans, two legends. And the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Johnny P. Angel and Sophia Spina, who is a newer host for us and has just been on fire every single time she has been on. So doors open at noon, folks, and we hope you will get there. There is not a lot of parking at the Free Thought Library, but the good news is there is a lot of street parking around. But do get there early. Get there early. Like, get there at noon, you guys. You get to hang out. You get to have fun. You get to watch the show getting set up. Like, it's a good time. And I think they order pizza. Like, that's like,
whoa.
pizza. I mean, come on. If that doesn't
booking
do
my
it,
flight now.
yeah. I mean, come on. Like, what do you do?
I really would want to get down there one day. You see so much about it, and with the brick program, you can go down there and see where your brick might end up.
Yeah, see, you're definitely gonna want to do that, folks. And like, send us pictures. I know it'll be a minute, but like, once you do that, like, send pictures and be like, that's my brick. But anyway, we've got some other calls, and it looks like we have got some good stuff here. I'm gonna try to get to every single person who is hanging on hold for us right now, but we may not. But we're gonna try to go through a little fast here. We're gonna talk to some of our atheist friends out here. We've got Alex, him in Tennessee. You've got a little bit of an interesting story, it sounds like. Talk to us. What's going on, Alex? You're chatting with Cross Examiner and SR.
What's going on, guys? So
good.
I am an atheist. My wife, she grew up in a cult, a Christian fundamentalist cult. I'll leave the name out for anonymity's sake, but she is now something, I don't know, but not religious. Her sister, one of her two sisters, is still involved in that cult, and both of her parents are. Then this other third sister recently came out as bi. And so I've been I've known the family for 6-7 years now, and was upfront when I first met them that I'm not religious. And we've always had an open dialogue. It was hard for them to accept it first, but at this point, like, we've done a great job at fostering mutual respect, and it's awesome. I'm so surprised with how much they have come to accept me as a very much not member of their church cult.
That's wonderful.
Which brings us to the thing that's happening now. The sister hasn't wanted to lie by omission, and she recently came out to the other sister, the still involved in the cult sister, that she is bi. Still in the cult sister is doing a great job so far at, like, putting on a happy face and being outwardly supportive, while peppering in the comments of, but that's not God's plan. Okay, but you understand the conclusion of this, all the stuff you'd expect, right? So here I am as the guy who took a long time to work on this relationship with this family so that we can all trust one another and have this, like, open dialogue. But I also feel like I don't want to hurt that, but I feel like I have a responsibility to help might be the wrong word from their perspective, but to usher in some understanding of the situation for that side of the family so that they can better accept their daughter and sister. I don't want to damage that relationship in doing so, but I don't want that sister to be alone.
For sure. And I think that this is a situation a lot of us really understand. A lot of us have been in this. Cross Examiner, do you have thoughts?
I do. First, congratulations on navigating so far this complicated situation. This is not easy. Now, you're using the phrase cult. I want to make sure we're clear on terms. So I've got some experience in researching and reporting on cults. So typically, one of the most defining aspects of a cult is that their members suffer a high amount of pressure to cut off ties with people that are not in the in-group. And so it surprised me when you mentioned that they were still willing to associate with you and your wife. So I without talking about the details, I just wanted to make sure that you can tell us what pressure are they under, because if they're still in the cult and they know they've got these heathens, for want of a better word, in their orbit, that may be risky for them to one degree. So that's my first question. My second question is, do you think that the sister who's putting in what some people might take as snide remarks, others might take as helpful remarks, do you think that sister that's still in the cult, do you think she's coming from a good place? Because a lot of times religious people will say things like that because they honestly believe that their sister's going to go and be in hell, and they don't want that to happen. And this is how it comes out as their attempt to help. So those are my two questions for you.
To your first question, I think this cult can be found in a recent book about cults. They even flirt with the idea of cults, with the term of cult. I'm very comfortable that they're cults, that they should have excommunicated some people, and they didn't. Really don't know how we got to the place where I know a ton of the members. I've been to headquarters. I'm welcomed in with open arms, I think, because I didn't start out in the cult and then leave, so I'm not an apostate from their perspective. I think they still have hope for me. But
yeah, your non-belief is less offensive to them. Yeah.
Exactly. So your second question, the sister, I believe wholeheartedly, has nothing but the best of intentions, but that doesn't stop potential harm, right? So that's where I'm trying to navigate. I feel like I really can't have a conversation, and I'm close with both sisters, very close with both sisters. I can't have a conversation with the current cult member sister about this without, I think, directly challenging the foundation of her beliefs. And that's, I think, the core of my question is that I can't talk to her about why she should support her sister in this without addressing why I think that her objections are unfounded. And that's a Band-Aid I don't want to rip off.
Yeah, that is the heartbreaking reality of what happens when the rubber hits the road, when religion really sinks into the brain, because there's no way around that. And you're absolutely right. On one level, everybody's going to be like, well, can't we all agree to disagree? Or can't we all just not talk about it when we're at the barbecue and stuff like that? But what you're telling them in their language is, I want you to shut up and just live with the fact that your sister is going to die and not be with Jesus and not get her own planet or whatever cult they may be in, or burn in hell, right? That's what you're telling them from their perspective. And they're like, even if my sister came to me and said that, I would still feel this obligation to do this. So if you're not going to do it, I can't be around you and not worry about you. So you end up with this tearing apart of families, and it's really tragic. I don't know, SR, you may have some experience in dealing with these situations. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I want to say, Alex, if you're not familiar with Recovering from Religion and the Secular Therapy Project, those are fantastic, resources here. Recovering from religion isn't just for people who have left religion, right? Like it isn't just for, people who are in that process of deconverting. Even it's for full-on believing members of various faiths, right? Just to have somebody to talk to, and put thoughts up against. They're not there to deconvert people or anything, right? And they're also there for those of us that have left religion a long time ago, right? And we just want somebody to kind of commiserate with and just be like, can you freaking believe these Christian nationalists, But I think a lot of what, you're talking about here, Alex, goes back to some of the stuff that we were talking about with our previous caller, Jenny, who was talking about when's the right time to kind of push back in such a stronger degree. And, when do I stand up for myself? When do I just kind of let it go and all of that? And a lot of this is going to be really, really personal. A lot of this is going to be what are your goals, right? With all of this, and what is the most effective, in terms of achieving that. So, for instance, it may actually be more beneficial to not challenge the sister right? That's still the member. Not be so strong with those challenges and always trying to bring it up. Maybe the more important thing
Sure.
is to just be a shoulder and another human for the sister who has left that belief system and is now come out as bi and is now receiving, you know, so much of that negativity, right? Maybe that's what is the most effective thing. Maybe that's what's the most helpful thing, right? Just you showing love and support to another person, just because you genuinely give a shit about them, right? As opposed to just trying to push a message, you know? On the flip side, though, of course, and this is kind of one of the unfortunate things sometimes, is also, Alex, maybe coming out real hard is actually what's going to be more helpful for this sister, right? Maybe just really, you know, getting into it. And I, you know, obviously we haven't mentioned, you know, this cult or anything, so I'm just going to use an example. Like maybe just getting to the real heart of the Mormon church and just being like, Joseph Smith was convicted of fraud like 2 or 3 years before he used the same method to say that the Book of Mormon was a thing. You know, like, come on, stop believing this nonsense. You know, that's why I think it is so valuable for us on the non-religious side to have so many different methods of tackling these difficult conversations. And I also think, not to, you know, they always say to end on a high note, but I'm going to kind of end on a bummer and give it back to you, Alex. But I think also we need to be a little more comfortable with the fact that unfortunately some scenarios, no matter how much we want otherwise, or no matter how much we try, they just don't end in the perfect, you know, blockbuster movie ending that we want. And like the dream world would be that everybody has their beliefs, you know, and everybody's super cool with each other and we're all one big happy fucking family. But unfortunately, I know all too well that just doesn't always happen. And it could be beneficial just going through, kind of playing through in your head, what is that like? What would the world be like where myself and this sister who has left this religion and is now come out as bi, and you know, what would it be like for us to not have these other people in our lives? You know, is it better? Is it worse? Unfortunately, at the end of the day, so much of this is very, very, you know, specific to you. But I think there are some kind of broad things that are helpful. And again, I just point back to what Cross Examiner said with our caller Jenny. You know, make sure you're safe and comfortable. That's always going to be just so freaking important, right? And then knowing what your goal is and the most effective means of getting there. And again, I'll just personally suggest, I think, you know, shouting out to some of those wonderful volunteers at Recovering from Religion and the wonderful people that take part in the Secular Therapy Project, that could also be incredibly beneficial. So what do you got for us to kind of end this out? We'll grab some other calls here, Alex.
Yeah, first off, appreciate your time. I think that the shoulder to crown position is probably going to be the highest probability of having a good outcome. The other side of it, to you're pointing out the issues with the Mormon Church, I kind of have a similar idea of not trying to change their mind, but using the Mormon Church in particular to, you know, talk about. They always bring up to me, well, of course our beliefs are true. Like you guys were talking about in your last caller, there are all these people who claim that they were eyewitnesses, or at least they claim that there were eyewitnesses, but all those people lie, and a lot of stuff comes back to arguments like that. And so I thought, I'm going to just tie this into the LDS Church and say, okay, well, we have all these contemporaries that would attest to what Joseph Smith is doing, and you are comfortable dismissing those claims. So at the very least, can you find, since you exclude, you rule out those arguments because those are hearsay, can we at least leave some room for fallibility, for being wrong about our own beliefs? Just leave that door open enough that you can allow yourself to accept your daughter on the possibility that you're incorrect.
That is an excellent approach. It's something that I was thinking about mentioning. The challenge is what happens when you get the no. You know, there's the famous debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye the Science Guy when they were asked a question, and what would change your mind, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and he listed Precambrian chicken and all of these things. What would change your mind, Ken Ham? Nothing. And so sometimes you run into that where you want to go in and say, hey, for the sake of the family, for the sake of the relationship, can we all get together and not talk about it? Can you at least accept the possibility that you might be mistaken, if not on the whole thing, on some of the details? Can we agree that because there's a chance that you might be wrong, maybe the family relationship is more important than what you perceive as her immortal soul? If they're open to that, that's a great approach. The question is, how do you get there? And it's long and complicated. And Recovering from Religion Foundation and the Secular Therapy Project, I both echo those references. They do amazing work. But yeah, if let your wife tell you what she wants you to do, and do that, and then maybe make some suggestions to her.
Yeah.
100%.
All right.
Thank you guys. Awesome conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. And before I let you go, man, I'll just remind you, we've got just a massive amount of wonderful people in this community. And there are so many great places, you know, run by fans for the fans, whether it's the Facebook or the Discord, which actually Cross-Examiner, myself, and our wonderful backup host, Armin Navabi, will all be hanging out in the Discord after this. So come join us if you can. But we've got a lot of really great communities, Alex, where you can bounce ideas off of, you know, people and just get some advice and just kind of talk about stuff. And, you know, give us a call back, man. Let us know how this all goes and kind of what the outcomes are. If it's good news, we want to celebrate together because that's what we're about. We're a community. And if it's bad news, we want to grieve with you, and we want to be that shoulder for you, like it sounds you're being for your sister-in-law. So thanks so much, Alex, for the call. Seriously, it was truly wonderful, brother. And I do hope we hear back from you in the future. I always do. I know we're supposed to talk to the theists all the time here. But it is really nice to talk to some atheists and non-believers as well.
Yeah, I agree. As a most time watcher, I do agree that those sorts of calls, it is called the Atheist Experience, and this is the Atheist Experience. We do go through this on a regular basis. The trope of, if you're an atheist that doesn't believe in God, why do you care? This is
for sure.
Exhibit 1 million out of a billion of reasons why we care, because we perceive that things are going wrong in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas of our lives. And we think that it would not be that way if people weren't so adamant about their belief that they understand the mind of the ruler of the universe.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we do have a couple of calls left. I am going to get to both of y'all that are hanging on. We did just have Maxie drop. That's a real bummer. Maxie, we tried to get on earlier. I thought they had, you know, a good topic. It was about beliefs don't matter, actions do. I actually think they both do. And I think beliefs may be a little bit more important. I don't know exactly, but I think they both matter. And the reason beliefs really matter is because they definitely influence those actions. So that's definitely a great topic, Maxie. If you're watching, please, you know, not today, obviously we're too close to the end, unfortunately, but we were going to get to you, but call back in the future. But I'm going to speed through some things so that we can get to these last couple of callers. And I know, Carlos, Anonymous Joe, these might be a little quick, but we are going to take them because I think both of these topics are things that Cross-Examiner and I care a lot about. So, but real quick, I'm going to tell you, we've got some wonderful people who have super chatted. So Daniel Shower, first off, I'm very sorry. I just feel confident I just butchered your name. But Daniel sent us $5 and said, surely there are better arguments for God than parts of speech. I genuinely love that comment, Daniel. When I saw that come through initially, like I just lit up in my head. I think that's hilarious. And yeah, totally true. Surely the all-powerful creator of the universe could have done a better job than just nouns.
At least boring nouns. Make it an adjective or an adverb. Adverb has a really good song.
Yeah. Like, come on. We've also got $4.99 from John Doan, who says, do you think that the desert murder manuals are a fair analogy of the war in the Middle East right now? I'll say I'm not exactly positive what the desert murder manuals are, unless you're just like using that as a terminology to describe like the ancient Abrahamic books and stuff. Yeah, I also think it's a very, very tense situation going on right now in the Middle East, and we definitely don't have time to go into it. But you can actually find my thoughts in greater detail on this. So they're out there. You just have to search the interwebs and the YouTubes and the so forths. But we've also got 666, that lovely number from Hell's Bells, a wonderful, wonderful member of our community and crew, a wonderful friend as well. The Devil's Holiday is afoot. Yay! I'm sorry. I should have probably yelled that, but I didn't want to blow everybody's eardrums. But what are you two doing for All Hallows Eve? I'll be honest. I'm probably just going to be hanging out with some of my buddies online. I think Dr. Ben is doing something really cool. So yeah, probably just hanging out with some good heathens and celebrating how we don't believe in a god. Yeah. What about you, Cross Examiner? What are you getting into?
Well, I have two boys. They're both past the trick-or-treating age. But I will tell you what we're not doing. We're not going to do what my neighbor has done when they were young, and we're not going to sneak Chick tracts into their Halloween bags, where the kids come home and they take out a comic book that's all about how they're all going to burn in hell unless they believe in Jesus, and they sneak it in without telling the parents. My jaw hit the floor when I saw that. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I actually don't really think that's a good thing to do. So that's what I won't be doing. I'll probably be sitting at home handing out candy and watching who knows, The Nightmare Before Christmas.
What a great way to get children against religion, though, right? Like, we have this whole holiday where, like, societally we're all just like, yeah, people just get to walk around and just get massive amounts of candy for free. Like, that is a child's freaking dream. And then you go and take the opportunity to give them a booklet. Like, that child will fucking hate your religion so quick. Like, hey kids, here's a toothbrush. It's like, you know what, man, fuck you. Like, you know what, just shove it up your ass. Anyway, we've got another 666 from Thomas Lippincott. Lippincott. I feel like I've just said everybody's name wrong. I'm really, really sorry to all of our wonderful super chatters. But says, hey Gilmer. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but hey, to you as well, Thomas. So before we grab these last calls, I am gonna say, have you ever stared up at the moon or the sky and had this overwhelming sense of joy or just an indescribable feeling that comes over you that can only be codified in the sentence, I wish there was more ACA content that I could watch on a 24/7 basis. We've all been there. Yeah. And the good news is that you have been heard, folks. You have been heard, and we have done something about it. We have now 2 24/7 live streams. We've got AXP TV that delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. And now Heathen TV provides you with clips from Talk Heathen. So watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts and guests you have never heard of. So check out tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/Heathen TV and join in on the fun. I'm pretty sure that when I started that, like, at least half of the crew was deeply confused as to where I was going.
I knew, like, I've listened enough to the podcasts all the time that I knew we were about that time. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going with this. I need to practice my improv. Yes, whatever he's going to say. Yes.
That's right. Yes. And yes. And
yes. And
that is the key to life, folks. Well, we've got 2 callers left. I know, again, y'all, we're going to be kind of quick with them, but we do want to take these because I think these are relevant to both myself and Cross Examiner. So we've got Anonymous Joe, him in New Mexico, asking, how do I have respectful conversations with people who disagree? Hey, Anonymous Joe, you're talking with Secular Rarity and Cross Examiner. How are you?
Good. You could say that's the question. There's also a very practical thing I'd love to be able to explain to someone.
Yeah, get it in real quick.
So Carl Sagan's Dragon in the Garage example, I found it mind-blowing the first time I heard it. And Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins' example of where if you have a stroke and lose part of your brain ability and then another stroke and then another stroke, you're gradually losing your ability. But then if you destroy the whole brain, you get it all back in the afterlife. I also found that mind-blowing. But when I have said it to a friend who is otherwise sympathetic and understanding of how I'm no longer believing and doesn't really believe much himself, he gets offended and calls it stupid. And I don't know what I'm missing. And like, to me, I can't articulate why those examples blow my mind to help other people benefit from it.
Yeah. So there's one thing that comes to my mind in this moment, and it's a quote from Daniel Dennett. And I've said it before, maybe not on an ACA show, but on some others. I don't remember. I say too much stuff into this microphone, honestly. But the quote from Dennett is that there's just simply no kind way to tell someone that they've devoted their life to a falsehood, right? And I probably have it a little bit wrong, but yeah, I think that sentiment is one that makes sense to me, right? Which is, for a lot of people, they really, really tie their sense of identity to their belief, their religion, right? And so even if you are as compassionate and as understanding and as empathetic as you can possibly be, at the end of the day, they will always take anything in that vein as you directly attacking them. And that, that sucks. That sucks that that's the case. But I do understand it, and I empathize with people. For me personally, one of the things that I really, really stress, and I try to, bring up as much as freaking possible, is there is a massive difference between the belief and the believer, right? There's a massive difference between Islam and Muslims, right? In fact, I would just pretty much cross the board say one of the big differences is that like 90 some odd % of the time, the believers are better than their beliefs, right? Like the reason that, we don't have all these Christians out there doing what the book says and slaughtering people and what's not is because those humans are just actually better than that atrocious belief, and I think focusing on that and really trying to explain, even in casual conversations with buddies or relatives or something, that you absolutely are not equating the two, that you are 100% separating these groups and saying, look, hang on a second here, friend. You're saying that there's no difference between the person and their belief. And what I'm saying is there is a difference. Like, yeah, I get that you're Christian, but you're also a human. You're also a person, and I can separate those two. And I can say, you're still a good person, even if I think that, you've accepted some really bad things for bad reasons. Right. It's not always going to work though, man. I'll just be honest with you, Anonymous Joe. And I kind of feel, kind of like when we were talking with Alex just a minute ago, where it's like, yeah, unfortunately, man, there's kind of a bit of a bummer side to this too, which is like even the best intentioned of folks, the most compassionate of folks, saying things in the nicest way they possibly can, are sometimes still going to piss people off with this topic, because a lot of people take it very, very close to heart. But I very much value respectful conversations with people who disagree. And I think that if you maintain that always in front of you, always the thing that you are progressing forward, and striving towards, I think more often than not, you are going to find that you do have better conversations. As opposed to just walking through the door thinking like, I'm getting ready to show up these believers. Suck it, Christians. Here I come. Like I don't feel like that method is often as effective when it comes towards a lot of our goals. But let me kick it over to Cross Examiner real quick, Anonymous Joe, and then we'll get your thoughts here. Okay.
Well, I don't know. That approach is pretty impressive if you could pull it off. I just can't pull that off. I agree with what SR is saying. I think that it's a form of a sunk cost fallacy that people commit, that, oh, I'm so invested in this that I can't back out now. And psychological study after psychological study shows that people are less likely to change their mind when presented the same evidence, the same possibly counterfactual evidence, if they have already previously verbalized a position on it. So if I've come out and I said, this is my life, this is what I believe, I'm now less likely, psychologically speaking, to withdraw that statement, even if I'm presented with evidence that would have convinced me if I had stayed silent. There's a bunch of stuff in that area. So I don't think you're dealing with somebody who's irrational or unusual. I think that you're dealing with a human being. My approach is always to have an honest conversation, a meta conversation about conversations, not talk about the issue, but talk about conversations and say, hey, I find we talk about this from time to time. I respect you. I respect your opinion. I think you're a great person, but I might disagree with you on a few things, and you obviously might disagree with me. Is it okay if we continue to have those conversations? Because I don't want you to feel like I'm attacking you. I genuinely am curious. I'm not convinced. I want to know why you are. And just have that conversation and say, honestly, if it makes you uncomfortable, we can just talk about sports or whatever else. We don't have to talk about it. And if you have that type of relationship and you can have that conversation, you may end up with, yeah, we agree to never talk about it, or we agree that he's going to chill out a little bit on taking offense or getting his back up when you say, well, I'm unconvinced by this thing that you are convinced by. Why is that? So I don't know if that helps, but that's how I tend to approach it.
I really like that approach, cross-examiner. I just want to say I really do think that genuine curiosity, that genuine showing somebody like, hey, I really am just here for the conversation. I just want to know what your thoughts are. I don't agree, but I really want to understand where you're coming from. I do think that's powerful. So yeah, I love that you brought that up. Anonymous Joe, I know we've shouted a bunch, but I'm going to give you the mic back. And give us your thoughts here, and then we're going to go on to our last caller.
Okay, I hear you, and thank you. Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. It's a little frustrating that he isn't really a believer, but his mother is a believer, and he seems to get defensive on his mother's behalf. And it's just weird because I thought I was just having a fun conversation, and when he, said that I was speaking hatefully, I'm like, no, it's just, I just find it mind blowing. It tickles my brain. And he's like, yeah, right. And I had no idea where it was coming from. But in the end, I just said, well, when I was a believer, I had sacred subjects that I didn't like to always be challenged. And I guess this is one of those sacred subjects for you. We don't, have, but I don't know what the next one will be that might offend them.
Sure. And yeah, totally understand that. And again, not saying that this method works, all the time for every single person, but just what cross-examiner was just saying, I think, and this is actually just something in general too. I don't think we do, a great job when it comes to us just checking in with the people that we're talking with regularly, even when it's a friend and like, we're not actually talking about like anything that seems controversial or particularly spicy or anything, but like, sometimes it's just a really good idea to just stop your train of thought for just a second. Doesn't mean we can't pick it back up. Doesn't mean it's not valid. Doesn't mean you don't have great supporting evidence, all that stuff. But just stop for just a second, take a step back and just check in with the person that we're talking to. And just be like, hey, is this bothering you? Like, if I keep talking about this, is this like upsetting you? Like, does this make you angry or sad, or like, does this bring up thoughts or something? Just taking a few seconds to just be a human, right? This isn't anything magical. This isn't anything that's exclusive to some religion or some divine practice or anything. This is just us being people going, holy shit, like, maybe I should see if they're okay, like I just haven't checked in with them in a while, and maybe that'll help you kind of figure out where those minefields are before you just accidentally step on one, because you ask that and then the person kind of maybe, you know, okay, maybe their guard was getting a little up, but now that you've kind of taken a step back and checked in, maybe it drops their guard a little bit. Or maybe it just raises it all the freaking way up. But they're just so much more comfortable with saying, hey, actually, we are approaching something that I really don't want to talk about, you know? So yeah, maybe that's just something to kind of throw in every so often. Just exactly what Cross Examiner said. Just check in and just be like, hey, you know, if this is something that's upsetting you, we don't have to talk about it, you know. Or even offer it to them the other way. Say, hey, Bill, throw some questions at me, man. I love to be asked stuff, you know. Like I just want to hear what people have to say, you know. So maybe some of that helps, maybe it doesn't, Joe. But either way, I like taking these calls because I think you know, we do still have a lot of room in the atheist space and the non-religious side of it to have some good answers to this stuff. And it can be difficult. It can be difficult when you're surrounded by religious people to know exactly how to navigate these situations. Again, man, I'll remind you, we got all these wonderful groups, these fan run Facebooks, the fan run Discord and stuff. So come hang out with us there too, man. And thank you so much, Joe, for giving us a call. I know we were short, but hopefully we at least touched on a little bit there. It's such a bummer that these shows have to end, man. Like, it so frustrates me. And again, like, if only there was a place where 24/7 you could watch live streams of past clips. Oh wait, you sure can, folks.
Is it just one channel?
It's not actually, you know, I'm glad you asked, Cross Examiner. I'm glad you asked. There are actually two channels. One is
that's 100% increase in channels.
It is.
Tell me more.
It is. Yes. You know, most people do not realize that it is such a great increase, but it is. We've practically doubled. Some would say we even have doubled. So yeah, thank you so much, crew, for putting that back up. They deal with all of the nonsense and ridiculousness that I bring whenever they begrudgingly let me back on. So another shout out to them.
Speaking as a most time fan, we love it when you do that. So please don't stop.
Oh, well, thank you. I always have a good time here. And before we go off the rails too much more, we are going to grab another call. Carlos, you are giving us a call from Puerto Rico. He, him. Hey, what is up, Carlos? It sounds like you have a little bit of a problem with the growing evangelical movement, kind of in the US of A. I also have a problem with it. What are your? I think Cross Examiner has a problem with it too. Actually, I've heard some of his podcasts, and he definitely talks about it. So yeah, give us your thoughts real quick, Carlos, and we'll give you ours, and we'll wrap up. So.
First off, thank you for taking my call. I know it's late, and I know you guys have a lot of other things to do, so I appreciate it. I really wanted to get this point through because I feel like, especially from Cross Examiner, I feel like the input would be very, very useful. Just to make it short, there's this, not just in the U.S., but in Puerto Rico specifically, there's from like the past, give or take like 4, 5, 6 years, there's been like this really growing movement of conservatives and evangelical Christians that I've been told by the call screener that there are some words that I have to be wary of, so I'm just gonna try to not put them out there. But you know, essentially they're trying to force religion in spaces that they shouldn't be forced in, and you know, and basically in legal spaces where, you know, decisions are taken that affect a lot of people, specifically regarding matters like abortion and things that will be taught in school and how they will be taught in school and all that. It's going crazy, and it's very concerning for obvious reasons. But in my case specifically is because I've been seeing that there's I don't think it's too big of a group yet. And the yet is what's scary, but there's these organizations have a lot of power in how do you say it in English? I'm trying to directly translate the word, but like just a lot of power in their word, and they just call a lot of young people. And I've been seeing a lot of groups and smaller organizations, even student organizations that are trying to advocate for a lot of these bigger parties that are, you know, what they're trying to enforce. And it's concerning because, you know, again, for reasons that we surely agree on. And I just wanted to know your input on what, you know, what we could do as secular thinkers, as atheists, or as activists. You know, I've even considered, I've been speaking with a friend who's also a very big fan of the show. What would it take for us to actually make the ACA in Puerto Rico, but not the Austin community, the atheist community of Austin, but rather the atheist community of Puerto Rico?
The atheist community of Puerto Rico, baby. Like, you know, nothing wrong with that.
Right. So I just wanted to know, like, what you guys would think, or what could you tell me for, you know, just to, like, how to navigate these things and how to, like, I understand that sometimes it involves confrontation, sometimes it involves, you know, perhaps debating or just coming face to face with these people and trying to, you know, just push them on what they're trying to what they're implying with their views and you know, their policies and stuff.
Cross-examiner, I know you've got good stuff on this, brother.
Yeah, this is kind of my wheelhouse. So just so everybody's aware, Puerto Rico is part of the United States, of course, and certain laws apply. And there is a history of this problem in Puerto Rico. My first recommendation is to support organizations like the Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF. And there is a Puerto Rico organization called, and I'm going to butcher the language, I never took Spanish, but Humanistas Seculares de Puerto Rico, or HUSE. It's, you know, humanist, secular humanism for Puerto Rico. They have teamed up in the past to kick prayer out of schools, things like that. They are constantly doing what they do here in the continental United States, which is holding people in power, holding them accountable to the rules they're supposed to follow. So that would be my definite first approach, is support those people, be in touch with them, say, how can I help? And see if you can volunteer, donate money. If you run into issues, bring them to these organizations' attention, because they will affect change. So Freedom from a Religion Foundation is the one I'm more familiar with. All the time they get complaints, small and large, from citizens around the country, and they will farm them out to specialists. I interviewed an attorney for Freedom from a Religion Foundation, Ryan Jane. I have a 2-part interview on my podcast where we go into this. And just in interviewing him, I had people reach out and say, hey, my daughter went to school and there was this private group in the cafeteria that was distributing religious literature. And sure enough, he's like, well, you should refer it to us. Write a letter, that behavior stops. So that's my first one. My second one is to do what you were contemplating, which is, how do we do an ACA in Puerto Rico? Well, you could do it by just doing it. You know, you just, I was sitting around the house one day and I'm like, you know, I still have a job, but I want to participate. I want to help. I want to do some advocacy. I'll just start talking into a mic and see if people listen. And that has led to me sort of starting to appear on these shows and making connections where I think you can make a difference. So if you've got a skill set, maybe you're a good organizer, maybe you're a good speaker, maybe you know people, maybe you've just got a room where a lot of people can meet, go and create a meetup. If they've got some sort of system that you're comfortable using, maybe have the first meetup in public, etc. But find people that are like-minded in your area to meet up and talk about these things, because just the process of talking about them, people will start saying, you know what, we should do this, and maybe that's not a good idea. But then the next time somebody say, maybe you should do this, and maybe that's a good idea. And then you start affecting change. And I'm assuming it's the same in Puerto Rico as it is in the continental United States. But that saying of all politics is local is 100% true. That's why you see organization after organization on the other side that's trying to push religion down the throat of the United States once again, hitting every local school board, hitting every little issue that's a local political one. And I don't want to get political here. I'm not taking a stance on that. I'm just saying, it takes a lot of effort to push back. So even if you can, in one small part, create a local group that's just like, you know what, we're going to canvass. We're going to hand out the flyers that you can download from the ACA's website to listen into these things. We're just going to raise awareness. That really helps. But ultimately, if they're trying to do something unconstitutional, they're trying to violate the law, definitely contact FFRF or HUSC and get them involved, because in the end, they know they're doing wrong. They know the politicians who do this don't care that they're wasting taxpayer money by doing it. You know, if they're instituting laws or putting prayer in school or whatever it may be, they don't care that they're wasting time doing it. And they don't care that they eventually, if they keep it up, will get sued, and the taxpayers have to pay a whole bunch of money defending a suit that they know they're going to lose. The only reason they care about it is because they can turn around to their core voters and say, Christian nationalism is the way to go, and they'll get votes, even though they're violating the highest law that they swore to uphold. So that's what FFRF does. HUSC, since they partner with them, I assume that they're focused on that as well. I know as recently as in 2020, those two organizations partnered together to get prayer out of schools in certain Puerto Rico schools. So those are my two ideas. I don't know, SR, if you have any other ideas.
Man, you hit abso-freaking-lutely everything. Again, I knew this would be your wheelhouse, and I'm so glad, Carlos, that you called in, because I didn't even know about that organization in Puerto Rico, and that's super cool. So like, there's something super duper tangible and close, Carlos. The only thing really I would just add is yeah, there are a bunch of wonderful nonprofit organizations like this who have that as their focus, right? American Atheists, the Secular Student Alliance, there really are just a bunch of wonderful organizations out there who, have a very similar, if not the same mission as like the ACA and Freedom from Religion, and so forth. So I think there is a huge starting point. It's not the end point, unfortunately. The fight is long. The fight is difficult. It is nuanced. It will take us repeating ourselves 15,000 motherfucking times, saying the same thing over and over again, seemingly beating our heads against the wall. But I will tell you, Carlos, it's because there are people like you. It's because there are people like us here at the ACA, because there are people like FFRF, that we have any of the progress or goodness that we have, right? It is because of us constantly fighting this battle that we have moved the needle so far. Unfortunately, it's not a fight that has an end. It is something we will always have to make sure that we defend, because the moment we take our eyes off of that separation of religion and government, well, we see what happens. Right? The moment we take our eyes off of how destructive these ideologies are and how permeating they want to be, right? They will start to encroach again. So, I think the only thing I can add, other than those extra, some of those other great organizations, some of those other great 501c3s, find a way or a place where you can decompress a little as well too. And that's one of the great things about the community here, right? The atheist community of Austin, baby. It's great to celebrate together, and it's great to plan and organize and figure out what the next move is and how we make the world a better place and champion, secular humanism and critical thinking. It's also really, really nice to, again, just have a place where you just go, damn, this shit is annoying, and just really let it out with some people who understand, because without us taking that self-care, without us making sure that we're in a space where we actually do have the spoons to continue this fight, we just won't, right? We just won't be able to. So yeah, just make sure that you're keeping yourself and your own well-being mentally, emotionally, physically, in that as well. So give us some final thoughts here, Carlos, and we'll let you go and get over to Discord. So.
Of course, cross-examiner, thank you so much. I did not know about Humanistas Seculares de Puerto Rico. I'm definitely going to check them out. I was aware of another organization here, but when I checked them out, I feel like they've been inactive for a while. But that one you mentioned, I did not know, so I'm definitely gonna try to see if I can like participate with them or just get in touch in any way. I appreciate all the input as well, Elliot. I really, really appreciate that as well. And that was a very touching part when you mentioned in the end, just make sure to be okay physically and then mentally, emotionally, because definitely these are topics that are important. These are topics that they circle through my mind on a daily basis, and I try to educate myself a little bit more every day. And it's just trying to reach for a community, especially here when atheism is still very much taboo. Even the word, it's sometimes even used. Atheist is sometimes used as jokingly as an insult. Like people will just say it in Spanish. They'll be like, te pasa por ateo, which means that happens to you for being an atheist. And I do appreciate the input and everything. So, and thank you again for taking my call. I hope you guys have a wonderful night.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling, man. It was great conversation, and hopefully we gave you a little bit of something there. And shout out real quick to all of our Spanish-speaking atheists out there. By the way, I just don't think we have enough stuff out there for those wonderful people. And I know there's some people out there that are making some strides in that vein. A host of the show who unfortunately hasn't been able to be back on as much lately, but I just want to send some quick love to Teo El Ateo, brother. I hope you're doing well. I know you are. I see you all the time working hard for the Spanish speaking heathens and non-believers out there, man. So yeah, if you're out there in the chat right now and you're a Spanish speaking atheist, why not say hey? And maybe Carlos is watching and Hola, you know what? That was right. Honestly, I should have gotten that. Yep, I should. I will. Yeah, I lost some points there, folks. You know what? That's fair criticism. Folks, this has been a wonderful show. I think this has been absolutely freaking awesome. But it's not over yet. It is not over yet. Okay. I've got some very important things that I'm going to tell you about right now. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. They'll be pretty short, and we'll all be heading over. Myself, Cross Examiner, and our wonderful backup host, Armin Navabi, will all be heading over to the Fan Run Discord to chat with you in just a few minutes. But remember, every week, we want you to share your experience, and the prompt for this week is wrong answers only. God sends natural disasters because he's mad about blank. So tell us what God is mad about in the comment section below the video, and tune in to next week at the beginning because your comment may be one of our top 3 favorites, folks. And don't forget that you can actually buy a freaking custom engraved brick. You can make a lasting impression on the ACA by participating in our awesome, super cool fundraiser. You heard me last week on Talk Heathen talk about the tiny bricks. They are a thing. They are real. I double checked. I am not imagining. It is not like an invisible dragon in my garage. You too can have these super duper cool things. Cross Examiner, you've already gotten your brick, haven't you?
I have. I'm thinking about buying another one now. You're selling it so hard. I just got one for Cross Examiner, but I think I'm going to get one that says this is not a brick to see which, like what evidence plays out, the claim or the reality. So that's going to be the one I buy next.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's a really good idea. See, folks, you can these bricks have even more purpose than just supporting this fantastic community that we all love here at the ACA. They could actually be a really good argument in a conversation with a believer. So visit tiny.cc/ACA bricks and you can get all of that information. And speaking of information on super cool things and stuff people are going to want to check out, Cross Examiner, where can people find out more about you, brother?
At thecrossexaminer.net. So website's got a link to my social media. I took the summer off because I have a job, 2 kids, high school, son on the autism spectrum. Turns out making podcasts is kind of hard. So who knew, right?
That's why we have the crew.
Right. More shout out to I as a fan who is now on this show occasionally. I can't tell everybody at home listening how amazing this crew is. Dealing with them, they walk you through it. They make it seem like you're just showing up to just have a chat. It is stunning. Having tried to do it myself now for a year, it is stunning the work they do. So yeah, just thecrossexaminer.net. I'm going to have my second season premieres this week, and the episode, I always try to start out with one episode that's called Common Ground. It's not about religion at all. The first episode of my first season was about, let's talk about the McDonald's hot coffee lawsuit and how wrong everybody was about it. And so if we can be that wrong about that thing, can't we be wrong about other things? So this episode this week will be on homeopathy, because I've got a history in FDA regulatory law, and we're going to dive deep into where does it come from, what is it doing now, and how is it hurting people, including your neighbors and loved ones.
Yes, homeopathy, a very, very interesting topic. And unfortunately, the crew is going to absolutely murder me if I don't close. But I want to talk about that. So if you are out there and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to hear Cross Examiner talk about homeopathy, please come hang out with us in the Fan Run Discord, because we are going to be heading over there shortly. And just definitely a huge, massive thank you to every single person that is out there today, hanging with us in the live chat, chatting up and showing love for our callers and stuff. And for all of you guys that aren't able to be with us here live and are here on the replays, seriously, it's y'all that help keep this running. You are the reason that we all do this. This community has been so incredibly valuable to so many people. It has given them a lifeline when there has been nothing else, so thank you so freaking much to all of you. And we actually got a last minute super chat, $2 from Fern Lovebond, who says, "'Cause I'm a broke bish who can't afford bricks." I love that. I love that, Fern. And I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for the super chat, because honestly, that is so helpful too. We understand that there are people who are not able to always help out, monetarily, financially speaking. And while it can definitely make a huge, massive difference, and I'm never going to turn away, somebody offering a donation, just being here, liking the video, sharing the video, talking with other people, and posting up those flyers, with permission on community boards and stuff. It's all very, very important. You just being here allows this to grow, and allows critical thinking to grow, and secular humanism and separation of church and state. I mean, it's all great stuff in my eyes. And again, it's because of you. It's because of the community. It's because of the fans. So if you do want to find out anything more that's going on with us here, you can very easily at our website, atheist-community.org. And you can always feel free to contact us at tv@atheist-community.org. We have a wonderful group of volunteers that answer emails, and they are always working very, very hard. So folks, come hang out with us in the Fan Run Discord. Cross Examiner, this has been an amazing time, and I hope we get to do this again, brother.
Same, absolutely. It was a thrill to host the show with you.
Thanks, man. Well, see y'all next time, where we get real heathenry and blasphemous and all that good stuff. So we'll see you next Sunday.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your eyes.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.